Right. Assalamu alaikum and good afternoon from Malaysia. I think this is the time we should start. And this is our 19th webinar. And we have so far more than 1,300 members from 18 countries. So today we are going to talk about three topics, which is reflection, feedback, and portfolios. And these three topics are very closely interrelated. So the outcomes for today's session, after attending this webinar, the participants will be able to, number one, explain the concept of reflection, discuss the role of reflection in self-regulated and lifelong learning, guide the students on how to reflect, give precise feedback. This precise is an acronym and we will talk about it. Oh. कैसे करेंगे? Sorry, can you see the screen?
Yes, we can see, sir.
All right.
No problem.
Okay. No, initially, I forgot to share the screen. Right. Okay. Now let's start with the learning outcomes. After attending this webinar, the participants will be able to explain the concept of reflection, discuss the role of reflection in self-regulated and lifelong learning, guide the students on how to reflect, and give precise feedback, and then use portfolios in the recording and assessment of reflection. So these are learning outcomes which we aim to achieve during this session. Reflection is a kind of self-assessment which has a powerful effect on learning, teaching, and clinical practice. We all can recall our own experiences of reflecting back on an incident, or a teaching session, or a clinical encounter, and how it influenced our subsequent activities. This is just a natural phenomenon that after an incident or an event, we try to think about it. We might pick up some shortcomings and then try to address them. So reflective practice is an essential attribute of a competent healthcare professional. So therefore, it should be part of the student training. Different names have been given to the reflection, such as reflective practice, reflective learning, critical reflection, or critical thinking. For students to become really fit to become a good medical practitioner, they must learn reflective lifelong learning skills. In other words, reflection should be part of undergraduate medical curriculum. Reflection is defined in a way as consulting with oneself, going back into thought, mediate thinking about an event or a situation. And it is a process. That's important to understand, that a reflection is not simply thinking, but it is a process which has its components. Thoughts are turned back and then they are interpreted and analyzed, and then corrective steps are taken. So at least 3 steps where there is thinking about an incident or event, picking up the shortcomings by analysis, and then taking the corrective actions. So this is a complete process, and it should be understood in that manner. Here are few statements which explain the concept of reflection. Reflecting critically on one's own experiences, number 1. Integrating knowledge gained from the experience with the existing knowledge, number 2. And acting on the insights is considered as a reflection, and it is a distinguished feature of an adult learning. The example here can clarify this statement. An infant was sedated for a minor procedure. Parents were informed not to feed till infant is fully conscious or awake. Child cries, mother feeds, and child aspirates. So that is an incident which has taken place, and then we consider about it, we look at the shortcomings, and we come to a conclusion that it shouldn't be left for the parents to decide when to restart the feeding. It should be the responsibility of healthcare providers to advise when to start feeding. So this is one way of, or one example of reflecting critically on one's own experience and integrating the knowledge into the existing knowledge and acting on that. The wise men believe in reflection, and it makes them wiser. Reflection creates greater understanding of self and situation to inform future action. And reflection simply means learning from own or others' mistake. So we should not jump to a conclusion. We should stand back, think about it, and then reflect about it, and then come to a conclusion. It is the reflection that has helped human race to survive and progress, by devising means to avoid fatal bites of animals. So to survive in the life, and the present concern to save the environment is extension of the same process. The trigger usually for a reflection is an event or a situation, and the outcome of the process is increased understanding. However, understanding alone is not enough. It will not improve practice unless these insights can change future responses to similar situations. Informing future actions suggests that reflection is a process with a definite purpose. So that is another important concept, that reflection has a purpose. So one thing, it is a process of few steps, and then it has a purpose to achieve. This is one way of explaining the reflection or cycle of reflection. We have an experience, or we observe some situation, and then we identify the shortcomings. We plan to address those shortcomings, and then we apply that plan. We act upon that plan, and then we see what happens after applying that plan. What are the outcomes? So this is one complete cycle of reflection. However, it is for a good reflection, this cycle has to be repeated. Action, reflection, and action, until we get the perfect situation. Here another example, conducting a teaching session, then reflecting, self-reflecting or peer reflecting, getting feedback from the peers about that session, and then the looking at the shortcomings, improving, and then applying that and new techniques to improve the teaching session. There are a number of methods of reflection, some of which are given here. For example, recording the session and then going through the session again and looking at any possible shortcomings, collaborative diary writing, thinking aloud, or writing reflective journals. So there are a number of ways by which we can reflect upon different incidents. There are three main applications of reflection. One, reflection for learning, which is self-regulated learning or self-directed learning, and lifelong learning. Second, reflection to develop a therapeutic relationship or self-therapeutics. And third, reflection to develop professional practice. However, in today's session, we will be talking about reflection for learning. And to understand this, we will take help of Kolb's experiential learning cycle. Here, there is a concrete experience or some incident or a situation, and then one reflect on that, and then is think about the possibilities, think about the reasons, think about the future actions, and based on that, apply those actions and then see what happens, what is the outcome. Here is an example. It is observed that majority of the road traffic accidents involve motorbike accidents. The one possible reason is thought to be poor visibility. Decision is made to switch on the lights even during the day. And then this rule is implemented, and the result is that number of accidents has decreased. So next thought could be, can we probably using a brighter light would be even more helpful. So this is one example of Kolb's cycle of experimental learning. We will talk a bit more about it in the next few slides. Experiential learning is a process in which learning occurs by going through an experience. We have learned a lesson from this experience. We have heard this sentence many times. But how do we learn from an experience? Experience alone is not sufficient for learning to occur. It has to go through a cycle where the experience must be interpreted and integrated into the existing knowledge structures so that it can become a new or an expanded knowledge. And reflection plays a very important role in this active process of learning. In Kolb's experiential learning cycle, concrete experience means a new experience or a situation is encountered which forces us to reinterpret our existing knowledge and understanding. Then, by reflecting on that, we find some inconsistencies between the findings of the new experience and the existing or previous knowledge. And this reflection gives rise to new ideas or modify the existing concept. And this is what is called abstract conceptualization. And the person has learned from the new experience. And then this new knowledge is applied and the results are seen as a new concrete experience. In this way, the cycle goes on. Here is another example. Concrete experience A drug is given to two experimental animals. One develops side effects, for example, hemolysis. Both animals are of the same race, nearly same age and gender. Same drug is given. Manufacturer is same, batch is same, expiry date is same, dose is same, mode of administration and the time of day of giving the medicine is same, and animal has eaten the same food. But we see that there is inconsistency, as one animal has developed a side effect whereas other has not. So there is something wrong somewhere. The abstract conceptualization may be thinking that maybe there is an enzyme deficiency in one of the animals, like G6PD deficiency. And then active experimentation would be to find other animals with the same deficiency, administer the same drug, and observe the results. So this is the whole concept of experimental learning cycle of codes. How do we identify the learning needs? The abstract conceptualization is the most important part. This is a time when the learner makes attempts to understand the actions or reactions to the experience. And when we try to understand, going through that process, we identify new learning needs. We identify the shortcomings, either in our knowledge or in our skill. Maybe new information that needs to be obtained, or new skills that need to be acquired to handle that situation. There is evidence that reflection is associated with deeper approach to learning that allows new learning to be integrated with the existing knowledge and skills. Diagnostic reasons of complex and unusual cases. The reflection is associated with this skill of diagnostic reason, and professional thinking skills and self-awareness in undergraduate medical students. Those three main areas are associated with reflection. Deeper approach to learning, diagnostic reasoning of complex and unusual cases, and professional thinking skills of self-awareness. 4 studies that showed increased skill in reflection led to positive outcomes and diagnostic thinking, professional identity, increased score in medical humanism aptitude tests, and increased score in final examination of ONG. So that was the concept of a reflection and understanding through Kolb's cycle of experiential learning, and understanding how we identify our learning needs. Now, coming to reflection, the quality of reflection cannot be assumed to be perfect all the time, especially by undergraduate medical students. So if reflection is not perfect, then the subsequent actions would not be productive. Guidance and feedback are important for effective reflection. And how to do that? Mentors can play a major role. They can help mentees in the process of reflection, and portfolios can play an important role for provision of feedback and guided reflection. We will see how to use these provisions. The potential of reflection for individuals may not be fully realized without the help and support of another person. And who is this other person? This other person may be a peer group member, or someone with a specific role, such as supervisor or a mentor. The role of mentor is to facilitate reflection, and for this to be effective, it requires a skillful mix of support and challenge. That means that the mentors should be trained how to help students to reflect. There are significant workload implications. Of course, if we ask the mentors to take up this job, they would have additional work to do, and there are a number of ways to handle that. Effective alternatives include group supervision. So rather than supervising one single student, you may be able to supervise a group of students. Another is a peer co-supervisor with students helping each other in the process of reflection. We used this strategy very successfully in managing our remedial students' preparation for exams, where students were helping each other in terms of reflecting on the process. The students presenting, for example, one bedside case to their peers, and peers giving feedback on that, and they acting on that. Strategies to teach reflection to medical students. I will use more of practical examples rather than going into the theory. The one is 3-minute reflection after each teaching session. Asking the students, what is the most important thing you have learned in this session? You may ask students to answer the question. What else would you like to learn about this topic? That would be identifying the learning needs. What are the likely resources you will use to learn the learning needs? When would you learn the learning needs? The time frame, and what evidence would you produce to show that you have learned the learning needs? So this just couple of minute exercise after teaching sessions, especially the small group teaching sessions, can be very, very helpful in developing the process of reflection and improving in the learning. The learning needs can be identified by other means. For example, ending a teaching session by posing some questions. It's always a good practice to start a teaching session with a question and to end the teaching session with some students. And these the questions should be related to the application of whatever has been taught. Second approach is called thought catching approach, which is that students note the points as they go along immediately, so that they do not forget. Whenever something they think about it, they note it. And this could apply to a teaching session, to an event or an encounter. Again, we use this in our remedial students group, and we called it patient to book approach, noting the points from the case and then going back to the literature to look at that. Feedback from others, the colleagues, the peers may note something which individual himself or herself may miss, or feedback from the patients, and critical incidents and significant event analysis. So analyzing the situation, especially if something has gone wrong. Here is another example of how to identify the learning need. During house job, Dr. A has managed many cases of epistaxis successfully, but today a patient came with epistaxis and bleeding doesn't stop with usual management. So question is there something different about this situation for a patient? Do I have the information or skills to deal with this new situation or a patient? Do I need to have further information or skills to deal with this situation either now or in future? So this is one incident of identifying the learning needs. But if we go even deeper to this, a deeper level of reflection, it would be to look where the problem is. For example, what is the underlying reason why the identified issue was not resolved? Was it lack of information or lack of skill, or even the deficiency of skill on how to address this lack of information? Otherwise, other way means that how to find this information. Is there any lack in the skill or ability to find the required information? And this question seeks to identify the learner's information seeking and personal development skills. So again, from a simple reflection and identifying the shortcoming, addressing, but the next level would be why this shortcoming is there, whether it is related to the skills of self-regulated learning of the individual. Another method of teaching reflection is using the concept map. Here is an example. Concept mapping, a tool for self-reflection, climate change. What is the evidence? The warming oceans or melting glaciers. What are the possible causes and what are the possible solutions? So this is a concept map which can help to learn reflection. And if, for example, we replace that issue with a situation that failed in examination, so there would be evidence of failing in the examination, then looking at the causes and the possible solutions. And this is where the guided reflection plays a role, because the student reflection may not be perfect, and the role of supervisor and mentors would be needed to guide the students in this reflection. Next, the feedback, which is again very closely related to reflection. In order to improve, one should know how one is doing and what can be done better. We cannot improve unless we know where is the fault. And that's the point where feedback can help by identifying that point of weakness. Without feedback, mistakes go uncorrected and good performance is not reinforced. And clinical competence is achieved empirically or not at all. Feedback is the process of helping students assess their performance and identify areas of their strength and weakness. It's basically seems a straightforward process of helping the students to identify their areas of strength and weakness, but it needs reflection both on the part of the teacher and the student. It involves guiding them on what they can do to improve the areas that are weak and sustain their strengths. The primary purpose is to keep the students to be successful in their course. Teachers are most often thought as a source of feedback. However, a student's peers can also help and provide excellent feedback. This is another cycle, effective feedback cycle, where a deficiency is identified either by the student himself or by a feedback. And then that deficiency is analyzed and the reasons are identified. The plan to address those shortcomings is devised, and that plan is applied, and then the results are evaluated whether it has been successful. Formative assessment is a very, very important component in terms of getting the feedback. And formative assessment is an instructional intervention, means this is something where instructions are provided and it's not necessarily progressional in nature. In other words, it may not be a summative examination, or it may not be a promotion exercise. It is to provide instructions. So instructional intervention aimed at evaluating performance and providing feedback. The concept of designing some assessments specifically for the purpose of providing feedback. So we should design some assessments, design some examinations, design some assessments only with the purpose of providing feedback. And that helps students tremendously in improving their learning processes. And this is something which is not really practiced. Means that what I mean to say is that although formative feedback is given, but specific assessments are not designed only with the purpose of providing feedback. Feedback should be precise. This is an acronym which comes from the feedback should be positive and practical, relevant, evidence-based, constructive and confidential, immediate, specific, and encouraging. Feedback has to be positive and practical. It is a positive process, and both the teacher and student have to understand its purpose. Feedback is intended not to demean or insult anybody, and therefore it should be in a non-threatening and non-judgmental and positive manner. And that's why the first point, that both student and the teacher should understand the purpose of the feedback. It is often helpful to ask the student to assess their own performance. When we are having this session of feedback, I think that is the first step, that asking the students to assess their own performance first before we give the feedback. And most of the time, the students would assess themselves in a harsher way rather than the lecturers, and that is an opportunity for a lecturer to provide the feedback. That means ATA approach, ask, tell, and ask approach. When assessing performance, focus should be on what went well and what can be improved, the two points. And third would be the ways or suggestions to improve the situation. Feedback is more effective if teachers and the students agree on this assessment. Some educators advocate what is called P&P, or positive, negative, and positive, a sandwich approach to provide feedback. Means begin with a positive statement, then give corrective feedback, and conclude with another positive statement. Now, important point here is that the positive comments must be genuine. If the positive comments are not genuine, the student would realize that the feedback is not really appropriate. Again, the feedback and the suggestions to improve must be practical. There's no point in making suggestions that are not practical. Of suggesting something which student is not capable of implementing is of no use. The feedback should be relevant to the issue at hand and give a clear and specific description. This is very important. While giving feedback, we should be talking about a particular incident only and not the other situations. Good feedback is based on the personal observations, not what others say. We should be descriptive rather than evaluative and tell the students what you noticed or what has been happened. Means that we should be informing only and we should not be judgmental in our statement. For example, during palpation, patient was grimacing rather than saying that you hurt the patient. Deal with the facts of the current situation. Describe the incident and provide a step-by-step plan, very clear plan, step-by-step to address the situation. Feedback must be constructive and confidential. Feedback is meant to be constructive and it is intended to improve the future performance. Preferably, feedback should be given in private. In some situations, however, the group feedback can be given, but it should be in such a manner as not to be embarrassing anybody. Let the saying, praise in public and punish in private, be our guide. So when we want to give individual feedback, it should be in private, whereas group feedback can be given on the general issues of the group. To be effective, feedback must be immediate. It goes stale when left unsaid for too long. If we take too long to give a feedback, it loses its effectiveness. It may be on daily or weekly basis and not just at the end of the course. And when we are giving this feedback so frequently, then it is seen like suggestions rather than evaluating somebody, and which is the positive aspect. However, we should be realistic and we should realize the time or the occasion on which we are giving the feedback. And often after a bad outcome, students are working through their own emotions. So immediately after an incident, especially unfavorable situation, at that time, the detailed feedback may not be appropriate to be given. Just a brief feedback with emotional support, and then later on followed by detailed feedback. So although in most of the situations it should be immediate, but in certain situations it can be delayed for a certain time. And it should be informal, not like a boss talking to a subordinate, but from a colleague to a colleague, or from an experienced to a novice person. And it has to be specific to be effective. We cannot generalize from one incident. It should be precise language, like should have asked permission of the patient before palpation of the abdomen. So give the exact point and specific to the event. Remember to focus on the performance and behavior and not on the person, means we should not be judgmental, and support the students to a better understanding of the issue. I think that is the first part of the feedback, where we should help the student to understand the situation to before any further action is taken. Most of the time when students are reflecting on that experience, they may not be looking at their own performance, and they might be blaming others for their failure. That's the time when guided reflection would help, and trying to understand the situation. Once students have understood the situation, only then the feedback would be effective. And of course, it has to be encouraging. Before providing the feedback, think about it, choose the right words, and it should be encouraging in nature, especially the last part of the feedback. Avoid evaluative language and end with encouraging words and offering the support whenever needed. Reflection usually occurs when a trainer has provided a specific feedback. A trainee who reflect on their performance are more likely to make use of feedback. Now, not every student would reflect upon the event or experience, especially those who have passed the test. And this is the situation where a feedback can be used to further improve the situation. So even if students have succeeded, then the feedback from the supervisor can help the student to improve his or her performance in the future situations. Now, coming to the last portion of this, which is about the portfolios and how to use the portfolios in reflection and its contents and advantages. Basically, portfolio is a collection of papers or other form of evidence that are collected together to provide the evidence that learning has taken place. It can be a folder which includes information evidence regarding students' performance, but important component is that it is included in it is the self-reflection. So every incident, every point of examination or teaching must be followed by self-reflection, and that is important component of a portfolio. The use of e-portfolios or electronic portfolios has really helped in implementation of this one way of teaching and learning. Portfolios are designed to track and audit the experience with reflection. That's important. So using this booklet or this folder or collection of papers to track the learning of the students or the improvement in the performance of students, but with reflection. And this can also be used as part of assessment. Reflection may be demonstrated through print or electronic journals, so students can use different ways of in writing their reflection, whether it's an electronic or print methods. They may use journals or blogs or essays. What should be the content of the portfolio? It's not really a fixed list. It depends upon what is the purpose and what we want to achieve, what are the needs. Any matter that provides evidence for the educational and work-related achievement or failure with reflection can be included in the portfolios. Here are some examples. For example, progress tests, semester results, contributions in a PBL session, written reports on research or elective projects, video recordings of interactions with patients, records of practical procedures undertaking in clinical skill labs or computer lab, assignments, case write-ups, certificates, feedback. But important thing is that each one of these components must be followed by a written reflection. Reflection on a session, for example, early clinical exposure or personal professional development, PBL session or interactive lecture. Reflection of at the end of case write-up, responding to few questions. What have I learned from this case? What further I need to learn related to this case? How and when I plan to learn, and what evidence I will produce to show that I have learned. So this is this way of reflection can be applied to any kind of session or written assignments. There are a number of uses of portfolios. One is tracking the personal and professional development. Portfolios can record the chronological work and chronological assessment over time, over different intervals, and after and before providing any interventions. And this can include outcomes which are not easily monitored by other methods. For example, personal growth, self-directed learning, reflective ability, professionalism. And the progress may be monitored over a range of areas. So not only a chronological over a time period, but over a range of areas. For example, students' ongoing work over different settings and in different situations. Portfolios can further help in further learning. In medicine, portfolios are used to study critical thinking and self-directed learning in daily practice of general practitioners. So by reflecting on different cases seen during the day, they can identify the shortcomings and improve accordingly. Again, portfolios can act as a catalyst in interaction between a learner and a supervisor, so they provide a good reason for a lecture and student meeting and discussing their professional achievements. Summative and formative assessment, especially if a student is a borderline in a certain situation, borderline pass or borderline fail. In that situation, the portfolios can help to make a decision based on the reflection and the achievements recorded in the document. It contains information regarding students' strength and weakness, thus integrating summative decisions with the formative profiles. Means the summative decisions can be made by adding some formative assessment components. It also helps in teaching strategies. It mirrors students and teachers' work and stimulates teachers to assess their teaching strategies. So teachers can assess their own strategies of whether they have been successful in addressing the weakness of the students. It also helps teachers to adjust their expectations in relation to thinking and problem-solving abilities of the students, because portfolios would give a clear picture about the ability of the student and the skills the student have. So teachers' expectations can be adjusted accordingly. Portfolios stimulate the use of reflective strategies, facilitate the use of past experience to define new learning and record the progress. The students get opportunity to analyze their learning techniques and skills. Right? They, again, looking at the weak areas, using the feedback, using the reflection, and taking the corrective actions. However, whilst portfolios may encourage students to reflect, the quality of those reflections cannot be assumed. That's why we came with the concept of guided reflections. So supervisors need to act accordingly. Any benefits of portfolios may be negated if the portfolio is seen as a time-consuming, burdensome, and addition to main requirements of the course. So what we need to do is make the portfolios lean, meaningful, personal for students, and fit in form and content to the purpose. So it should be very specific and meaningful. Define and communicate its purpose, and appoint mentors to guide and support portfolio learning. So take-home message for this session. Reflection is an important attribute for self-regulated and lifelong learning and professional development. 2, students can be trained and need to be guided during the process of reflection. There is an important role of feedback in development of reflective practice. Portfolios can be used to record and assess the level of reflection and students' personal and professional development longitudinally, and to make portfolios acceptable and implementable, make them lean. Thank you very much for your attention, and I will be happy to answer if you have any questions. So the questions which I will address the questions which have been posted in the chat box first. First question: how frequent must be reflection by mentor or peers? Actually, it is teaching session. The mentor would come to play when students need the guided reflection. Once students have been trained, then the students have to reflect after every teaching session, but the mentor has to help them off and on in assessing their reflection. So we are not saying that mentors and the peers and the student, they should meet and discuss reflection after every session, but meeting mentors would be on occasional basis, whereas the mentor has to make sure that students have developed the skills for proper reflection. Second question: sometimes formative assessment not attract students when they know that it is not there to enter their marks. Basically, yeah, that is the situation we do face. But if we are able to convince the students that these sessions are helpful for your future performance, I think then they would realize it. And once you have given the formative assessment and they have found it useful, then they would follow the line. Next question: referring to the slide on question to be asked for reflection after a lecture, what is the need of question on resources? Because if student fails to come up with appropriate resources, then you can help them. The purpose is not to know whether students know the resources or not. The purpose is to identify the students who might need help in terms of finding resources. So you can tell them the book or a chapter or a journal or a website where the particular information would be available. The next question is where to portfolio, whether with student or supervisor? No, portfolio should be with the student, because they have to write their reflection, and it is because sometimes they may be reflecting later on, so it has to be with the student. Let's say mentors or supervisors can meet the students on weekly basis and go through this portfolio and look at the level of the reflection which student is performing. So those were the written questions. Now, if anybody has any other question, I'll be happy to answer. What is the best way to...
Sir, I am Professor Dr. Ghulam Hussain from CM at MedEd College, Khariyan.
Yes, please.
Sir, I am Professor Dr. Ghulam Hussain from CM at MedEd College, Khariyan. Sir,
Yes,
my
please.
question is, thank you very much, sir, for very nice presentation and very nice information you have given to us. My only humble suggestion is that kindly add the examples of basics also along with clinical.
Yes, absolutely right. The portfolios and reflection is following every teaching session, whether it is in a preclinical or clinical. Although I do realize that it becomes a difficult process if after a lecture when the class is big, but it can be very useful. For example, these small group sessions, if you are having problem-based learning sessions, or if you are having practical sessions, or you are having, let's say, the dissection sessions in anatomy or biochemistry practical sessions. So it actually, it's not only the clinical, but it applies to preclinical as well. And the other importance of it is in having preclinical is that if we follow it properly, the students would be trained properly before they go to the clinical, and they would be in much better position to reflect on the situations and incidents in their practical.
Sir, thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much, sir, for this mind-blowing informations you have given to us.
Thank you, sir, for your...
You have enlightened us, sir. Thank you very much.
Can I add to this last
sir,
question?
You have enlightened us.
Yes, please.
Thank you very much, sir.
Please. Naila Beg.
Yes.
Madam Naila Beg, yes.
Since the question was regarding this reflection thing in the context of basic sciences, if in a lecture with 100 students, if this is an interactive lecture and you have included a quiz on Mentimeter or any online thing or Kahoot, then that can be given as a formative assessment, and that can students can add those results into their portfolios. So this I think will match with the...
Yeah, thank you for that suggestion. Actually, as I said, it might be a bit cumbersome after a lecture of 100 students or that, but still we can ask the questions and students can write their answers accordingly in their portfolios. Yes. Any other question?
Prof, I've already put in there. Prof, so?
Prof, so can you repeat that, please?
Okay, I have two questions to you. One is the difference between feedback and debriefing. That's the first question. Second question is, I'm preparing a portfolio on my teaching practicum. So in the portfolio, you suggest that we include the reflection. So mine would be a documentation, a reflection in the way of a documentation of my teaching experiences. And then do I need to reflect on those, or do I need to have a lesson plan regarding my teaching sessions? That is my second question in the portfolio.
Let me address the second question first.
Okay.
Without reflection, portfolio would not be complete.
Okay.
Otherwise, it would be just become a logbook.
Yes, so that is a clarification I needed, Prof. So I have to make documentation. So I make documentation of my lecture, all right? and then I've got to reflect on that. Is that it, Prof?
That's right. Yes, that's right.
Yes.
But we are talking about the students. So student
I'm a
has,
student. I'm a postgraduate student.
yeah, of course, we are student for all of our life.
Yes.
So we have to reflect. For example, the few questions I said, that what have I learned something new from this session?
Uh-huh.
Is there
Uh-huh.
anything?
Okay.
Is there anything which I need to learn more related
Okay.
to that
Okay.
topic?
So
And
I must address that, Prof.
that's right.
Okay.
That's right. So
Yes.
in this way, we plan our learning, and that would help.
Yes.
The first question was about feedback and debriefing.
Feedback and debriefing, Prof.
Yeah,
Yes. The difference.
the feedback is when you give feedback to others,
Yes.
other students or peers or other lecturers. And
From me to them, for
yeah,
example.
yeah, and the purpose is to identify the shortcomings and
Yes.
to suggest how to go about it.
Yes.
Whereas debriefing is more for a group rather than
Yes.
individual.
Yes.
And in debriefing, the members of the group might reflect upon their own performance.
Yes.
And at the end of the day, they may come up with a plan to improve the functions of the group in future.
Oh, so that one, we don't call it feedback from the students. We call it debriefing by the group of students,
Yeah,
right? That is the title.
But it is, of course, a continuation of feedback in a different way.
Because I'm conducting that, or I give them assignment at the KK Maharani Clinic, and
Right.
then I brief them, and then we get back into a seminar that is called debriefing. That's why I want to clarify with you what is the difference between feedback and debriefing. Thank you very much, Prof.
Thank you. So there is a question here in the chat that is reflection and critical thinking similar, or the latter is step ahead of reflection? This question from Aisha Menaz. No, I think they are similar. They are same. They are different words, because reflection is critical thinking as well. In reflection, you are identifying the shortcomings and then analyzing, trying to find the reason for that shortcomings, and then addressing those shortcomings.
Excuse me, Assalamu alaikum, sir. Sir, I have a question.
Yes, please.
Sir, my question is, what is the best way to communicate a faculty member about feedback of students after a module or any session? Should all feedback be forwarded to faculty member, or only comments related to some issue which need to be addressed be forwarded, or comments should be forwarded with percentage of the students giving any negative or positive feedback?
Okay, now this is when what I understand is, Prof. Iram, that you are talking about feedback at the end of the module.
Yes, sir.
And this feedback could be on the module overall as well as on individual lecturers.
Yes, sir.
So the feedback for individual lecturers is confidential, and only the person who is taking feedback and the lecturer about whom the feedback is given, they should know about it.
Right.
And then it is up to that lecturer that they want to discuss about it, or they want to consult their peers about it and analyze the situation, because sometimes we may think that not everything which student is saying may be accurate. The important thing is that it is a completely private information. It should not be used for any other purpose, like for promotion or going against some individual. So it is the property of that individual, and it should be used in that way. And the person who is collecting the feedback is simply passing the message from one person to another without adding his or her opinion in that.
Right.
I hope that answers your question.
Right. Yes, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Yes, any other questions? If not, as usual, I would like to share my last two slides. First is about the next webinar, which would be on 28th of November, and it is on item analysis. And Professor Dr. Ruxana would be conducting that session. And second, my usual appeal to all the participants to donate $1 or equivalent amount in your local currency to any individual deserving in your neighborhood or any organization in the community. This would be part of our teaching learning activity. Thank you very much, everybody, for your support and attendance, and see you, inshallah, in next webinar.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I appreciate you very much.
Thank you, Professor Malik.
Thank
That
you,
was
sir.
nice lecture.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Prof. Alam.
Thanks.
Thank you very much, Prof.
Thank you.
Prof. Nele is from AMU.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am.